Man, Benny, I don't get tired of hearing that promo video, hearing the music you put on Ken's promo video. Man, that is outstanding, man. Outstanding, outstanding.
Absolutely, it's great. I love it.
It's isn't it great? I mean, the music, even the yelling at the end. Oh, and the pictures, beautiful, beautiful.
Love it. Love it.
Guys,
Very, yeah, very nice.
exactly. Guys, welcome back to all the listeners, everybody that follows us. Yesterday, we had some minor, well, not minor, major technical difficulties, or the internet where Ken was at wasn't working properly. We hope today's interview, we're going to start off where we finished off last night, talking about the toe sucker. With that said, Benny, I know you have a quick shout out, and then we'll get started right away. Go ahead. Go ahead, Benny.
Yeah, our shout out today is for the United States Border Patrol's BORTAC tactical team. I mean, they, along with their canine, apprehended Danilo Cavalcante, the escape killer from Pennsylvania, man. They are the true elite unit in our country, man. They make people like Joe Preciado proud, man. Joe was also a member of an elite Border Patrol team back in the day. So, man, it's awesome. It's awesome to see Border Patrol involved and apprehending this guy.
Most definitely. Home 24/17. Welcome to the show, my brother. Welcome again, compadre. All right, Benny, let's get started where we left off, man. I'm sure people are anxious to hear about the toe sucker. Let's get started.
Hey, well, Ken, you had the investigation dubbed the toe sucker. Tell us about that case. So we started talking about it, but then you were breaking up. We want to know how you were involved. I understand you said there were search warrants executed. Tell us what was found on those search warrants. Tell us about the case from the start.
Right. So this fellow was with the Marshals Service. He was a detention enforcement officer, and he was entrusted with the detainees that would come over to the courthouse in San Antonio and make court appearances, and then they would go back to a Wackenhut facility. So we got some information from one of the female detainees. Saying that this guy was actually sexually assaulting her, and that snowballed. And then, by the end of our investigation, we had four very attractive female inmates, detainees, and one court security officer, and that was a bizarre situation with the court security officer. So I worked the case jointly with the U.S. Marshals Office of Internal Affairs. They were very helpful because they knew the territory, they knew the employees. So I had a lady investigator, and she was fantastic, especially interviewing women. So I was very happy to have her. We had some fantastic prosecutors. And this guy, what he was doing, his MO was to find a woman that he wanted to be with, and then he would call over to Wackenhut and tell them, "I need to see Ricky." Let's say her name was Ricky. I want to see Ricky. Bring her over. So now they would bring her over, and there's a they're in the courthouse, and he has a isolated place where he works, and it's out of camera range. Not only out of camera range, but there's a small little office right across from his station where the detainees can speak with their attorneys. So the guy was very clever, and he very calculating. Called these ladies as he would see them, he would like them, and then he would he'd call them over, and then he would threaten them. He would say, I want you to do X, Y, and Z, and if you don't, I can increase your sentence just by, hitting a few keystrokes. And, some of those women had children, and they weren't sure. Some of them doubted it, but they thought, well, maybe he can, and I don't. So this guy was an odd duck. I mean, this wasn't your standard pervert. He was into sadomasochism. For example, he was into toe sucking. He had a foot fetish, which I think they called frottage. I learned about that during this case. And then he would tell them as he's, performing sexual acts, and also digital penetration. No rape per se, but, groping them, touching them, putting his fingers in parts, unknown parts, things like that. So yeah, and what was interesting is fact one of the ladies said that his fantasy was to be kicked in the balls. That was his fantasy because he was a masochist, and she said it gave her great satisfaction to kick him in the balls over and over, and he kept asking for more and more. So it was just, and then he would tell the girls, look, and his other fantasies were, I'm going to take you to my home. I'm going to dress up in a judge's robes, and I'll have nothing underneath, no clothes on underneath, and then we'll have sex. So we interviewed, 4 females came forward. They didn't know each other, which was fantastic because we were a little worried that, maybe they're concocting a story. They're all conspiring against this guy. So when we heard the story, my co-case agent, myself, I thought, boy, this guy is in trouble, and he's really, he's really assaulting these women day in and day out. So I said to the lady, I said, we should let's take these girls to the prosecutor. The prosecutor has got to meet these girls because he's the one that'll make the decision whether to indict or not. And I knew that these girls told him a very emotional story, and each in her own way. And so,
Ken, real quick, did you polygraph these women?
No, these women were not polygraphed. No.
And the DA or the AUSA wasn't requiring a polygraph just to cement the case? No?
No. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a great question, and I can't recall why not. But again, when he met these girls in person and they told their story again, and the details didn't change. There was the same story over and over. He was enraged. He was enraged, and as we got to the door, he said, "I'm going to indict this guy. I'm going to indict him."
Good.
So that's what happened, and we arrested him. There was a search of his on his property.
Hey, Ken, but before that, I read in the books, I read the chapter, you talk about there was also a former Miss Texas who was actually a correctional officer that he actually had. Tell us about that, because that was the case that really cemented, let's go after this guy, correct?
Absolutely. When that happened, I realized there was no doubt in my mind that this guy was a pervert. So here you had a beautiful court security officer. She had been involved in Miss Texas pageants. And so she's, at work, she's sitting in her chair, and she has her feet out, resting on another chair. Well, he comes walking into the lobby, sees her, and he instantly, goes on top of her leg and starts riding her. And she says, "Oh my God," his penis was going back and forth on my leg. I screamed, and he got off me, but he thought it was a joke, like it was so funny. But the prosecutor did not see it as funny, and he added another count. So there were 7 counts against this guy.
Ken, do you think that he was progressively getting worse?
Yes, I think so. And who knows who he had assaulted. He'd been there already for 10 years, something like that. So, and he was a very quirky guy. So he may have gotten away with murder, but he picked on the wrong women, and the court security officer was the icing on the cake.
Tell us about the search warrant. So now the DA is going to file the charges. Now tell us about the search warrant. What happened?
Yeah. So,
hey Ken, quick question. Were you working in internal affairs at the time? Were you IA? And who was handling the case? Was it the DA or was it the AUSA?
No, the AUSA is directing the case. But again, my office had oversight of all the Department of Justice components, including the Marshal Service. So that's why I'm there. And again, I'm teamed up with someone who's with their internal affairs office, but they can only work like administrative cases. They can't work criminal cases, and we could. So that's how that worked. But yeah, we decided that we go in. Of course, we arrest the guy, and then we do the search, right then and there. And what we found was pretty crazy stuff. A bunch of magazines. One of them called Toe Suckers. So the stories that the girls were telling us seemed to make sense. Then there was a judge's robe. I don't know where he got that from, but again, this is the story that the women had told us, and there it is. And then I think the oddest thing, there was we found maybe 10 to 15 books on how to escape, how to become a fugitive, how to disappear, how to change your identity, and that was bizarre. And so I don't know. He never. We asked him, but he got a lawyer and he wouldn't talk about it. But that is very curious, and we thought maybe he knew something was up, and he just, was getting ready, or if something happened, he would take off. I don't know.
So they found him guilty. How much time did they end up giving him?
So they gave him, and they deliberated. The jury deliberated, I think, less than half an hour, and they came back with a guilty verdict. He got 51 months. 51 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Ken, since the girls, the ladies, they were illegally in this country, right? That's why they were being detained?
I think no. There were various there was maybe one immigrant, or maybe two, something like that. But the other girls were on different charges. Like I remember one girl, theft. She had a theft charge. That's what I recall. I don't recall all their crimes.
Now, what this guy was doing, taking advantage of his position, do you see that as very uncommon or pretty common?
Well, look, I mean, it's thank God it's mostly uncommon, right? But here and there, these characters pop up. So again, we had oversight over the Bureau of Prisons. So I was in there. I was in the prison environment quite often. Not just Border Patrol or INS or DEA or FBI, but BOP. And there was there were these correctional officers that were preying on women, I met several of those. We did meet one woman that had staged the whole thing. So she trapped the guy's semen, and then she used that against him and said, so I want this and that, or else I'm going to go to the authorities. And the craziest case, and I didn't mention this at all, not in the book, but this is a correctional officer out here in California who has sexual relations with a female inmate, and then he falls in love. Well, he impregnates her, so now she's pregnant, and he falls in love with her. Of course, we go to the prosecutor, and he decides, no, I'm not going to prosecute because they're in love, and the correctional officer swears that he's going to marry the girl, so we're not going to prosecute him for sexual assault or sexual relations. That was crazy. Not in Texas. Never happened in Texas. Only in California.
Yeah. Hey, before the next question, I want to give a warm welcome to Roy Alhambre, my Castle Park Trojan brother, VP60. Welcome to the show. And my brother in arms, Bobby Lopez. And I love this quote: "Guy couldn't hold the line." That's a great one, huh?
Very witty.
That's right. Go ahead, Benny. Let's go to the next question. Outstanding.
Hey, Ken, so just real quick on that last thing you were talking about, the correctional officer. Was he a correctional officer for the Department of Corrections or a sheriff's department?
For the Bureau of Prisons.
Okay.
The federal Bureau of Prisons.
Okay.
So we had those facilities, and we also had contract correctional facilities, like in California City and other places.
Yeah. Right. Hey, you had another case that was dubbed the Dirty Dog Handler case. Tell us about that one.
Yeah, so this was a local fella from El Paso, and he had a special needs child, and he had addictions to gambling, heavy addiction to gambling, alcohol, and he was a real womanizer. And this guy decided he joined the Border Patrol in 1985, and within about 2 or 3 years, he had been corrupted by the cartel in Juarez, the Vicente Carrillo Fuentes, DCFO, we call it. A guy named Danny Soto. working with him. And so what he ended up doing, he was a canine handler, and he was waiving loads. Of course, he's getting paid thousands of dollars to waive loads of, at the time, marijuana and cocaine through these checkpoints in and around El Paso. And perhaps the most terrible part of this is, of course, he does it for about 15 years, and he's, under the radar. He's not flashy. He's not buying expensive things. The only inkling that you have that he's involved is at night. He puts on that the hat, the boot, the Tony Lama boots, and he becomes like a narco. He starts hanging out and drinking and womanizing that whole thing. So his, he had the dog, he had the canine, and what was the terrible part was, we heard that he was in Juarez with the dog, and would, the cartel would pay him, and probably give the dog a bone, I hope. And the dog would go around and alert on the packages until, and then they would seal it hermetically until the dog could not alert. And then when that happened, they said, okay, good to go. It's good to go. We can send it right through El Paso. Thank you, Arturo. Thank you very much. And thank you, dog. Here's a bone. So that was, to me, that was just the act of a traitor. I mean, this guy just betrayed his country, and the poor dog, was, he gets involved in the whole process. But this fella slowly, and he was very difficult. He was in an area in the lower valley, surrounded by ranchers and people like him, and it was very hard to get people in there, to get sources. I'm a gringo. As much as I can speak Spanish, I'm going to be made very quickly there. So he was able to hide out and remain low for about 15 years. And before I left El Paso, because I was promoted and I was headed to LA, I had a sit down with the guy, and I said, Arturo, you and I, we both know what you're doing, and it's dreadful what's going to happen. Think about your family, and look, I didn't get to you this time, but someone else will be behind me, and they'll get you. And when they get you, it's going to be a sad, sad day. And sure enough, he got the FBI. They launched. I left, then the FBI launched a case against him with a task force, and they did some undercovers. They got some great undercovers. They got an informant from Juarez, and they took him down. Is what they did. And he was also playing footsies with Carrillo Fuentes' niece, which was very dangerous. He was really, I don't know. He was, he was pushing the envelope.
Hey, Ken, I found it very interesting that when you met with him, you actually went to his watering hole.
That's right.
You went to his bar. It was full of cartel members, banda music playing, and you sit there, you order a beer, and you have a beer with them, and you just basically say, hey, give it time, we're going to catch you. And you left it at that, right?
That's right. Yeah, I knew, of course, I knew him well. I knew his haunts. I knew what his activities. And I wanted to make a statement that we know what you're up to. But I'm giving you a way out. Stop what you're doing. But of course he couldn't, and he was in such debt. And the cartel gave him a thoroughbred racehorse named Federal, and and he owned it with this guy Soto, who was murdered. And when Soto was murdered back in 2005, Arturo's world started to collapse. And then the dog died, and then he was isolated and in real trouble. He went
how much time did he get?
Oh boy! So when they arrested him, he got out on bail, on bond, and the collateral was his home and his parents' home. So and he pled guilty. So now he's supposed to come to a hearing for sentencing, but he never shows. Instead, he goes across the border to Torreon, and he becomes a fugitive. And you know the rest of the story because you read it.
I'm not going to let it out. Buy the book, and you're going to love the ending. Buy the book. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just amazing. And when the Mexican federales caught him, they extradited him, and now he's in front of the judge, Frank Montalvo, who is, he was supposed to see Montalvo like a year ago, but he skipped.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Montalvo, so the judge was fit to be tied, and he said, "You, young man, you are a traitor to this country," and he said, "You're getting 70 years." So he's in Terre Haute, Indiana, at the federal prison there. 70 years.
Wow. Good. Good.
Yeah.
I'm glad that they threw the book at him, a dirty officer.
And
Yeah.
now he did pass the polygraph. The bureau gave him a polygraph. Were you working alone? Or were there other federal agents working with you? And he passed. He said no, it was just me. And he passed the polygraph. And I believe that he kind of stayed away from other federal agents. This was his thing.
One of our pastors that watches our show is asking the name of the book, and I'm going to go ahead and put it up here real quick. A Cop's Son. You could buy it on Amazon. I believe it's like $12, but it's a great book. I highly recommend it. A Cop's Son. We'll put it on our notes at the end of today's presentation. With that said, that segues into my next question, which is: describe to our law enforcement listeners the need and the art of recruiting informants.
Well, everybody is unique and will come into that with their own approach. I'm a people person. I'm extroverted, so it's a little easier for me to work with informants. I think you've got to be genuine. You've got to respect these people. You can't. I saw even someone at the FBI treating informants like dirt, and I was mortified to see that. That was awful. And you don't do that. I mean, you treat them with respect as you would treat any person, like your fellow law enforcement people. But the big thing for me was listening to them. And you guys know, you've sat across from people for many years. Maybe hundreds of people. Just listening. They just want to talk, and it gives you a chance to kind of scope them out. And see, because sometimes first impressions are deceiving, and so you have to be careful. Of course, as I'm, the empathy. You have to show empathy. You have to, of course, you might try to help them out, cut a deal with them, things of that nature. But I would just say respect. It's like it's common sense, really. And you can't. What is it? The saying is, more with honey, you catch more with honey than with vinegar. And I remember working. Now this is private sector, and we got a guy involved in a fraud, and and I gave him a way out. I said, you did this because you stole the money because your father was in the hospital. Yes, Mr. Strange. Thank you for giving me that excuse. That's exactly what's happened. I didn't care. I just wanted to get him to say I did it. But the other people, they jumped all over him. They said, "Oh, you're," and I hate to say this, "You're a piece of crap. That guy's a bastard. He's this, he's that, the other thing." And I said, "No." I said, "He's a human being." And so he asked me as we're walking out from personnel, he said, "Could you accompany me to the gate?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. I'll do that." And we got to the gate, and I said, "It's not the end of the world." I said, "You've learned something. You can change your life." And then like a week later, he called me and he said, "I have a lot of information for you. There are some bad people in this company." So just treating him with respect ended up, we got a bonanza of information. And so that's what I would advise the young men and women in this business.
Most definitely. And you know what? With your book, at the very end, in the epilogue, you actually give sound advice on how to recruit informants and why you need to have informants. With that said, Pastor Carlos Zamora, welcome to the show. And we also have the prison guard, our good friend, our brother in arms, Hector Bravo, the prison guard. With that said, I have one more question, and Benny has another question.
Hey, let me interrupt you real quick.
Oh, go ahead, Benny.
That saying you said, that's one of David's favorite saying, the vinegar one. David always uses that,
Which one?
The one with the vinegar. You get more out of something.
Yeah.
I've heard you say that so many times,
Yeah, that's so true.
With me on my interviews, it was like, let the person talk. you know, and listen,
Exactly.
listen. Don't interrupt. Listen,
Exactly.
and get them pinned down to a story.
So
Once you get the story, you
right.
start tearing up the story.
Yeah. So Benny, you're absolutely right. And this thing about listening, I always call it 80-20. You know, you let them talk 80% of the time, and we talk no more than 20% of the time. Because, and you guys know this very well, you've gotten in situations where maybe your colleagues are talking 80% of the time to a guy that's, you know, he's cowering, he can't talk, and that's not a comfortable situation for anybody. So
Right.
I try to go 80-20, and, you know, of course, polygraphs help. You know,
Yes.
you do your due diligence with these informants. Some of them are career informants. You know, they're criminals with career, and each one is different. So, but I would say, yeah, respect. Just show a little respect. It's not hard.
The prison guard says active listening skills.
There you
Very
go.
true. Very true, Hector.
Nailed it. That prison guard nailed it. He nailed it. Yeah.
Exactly. With that said, I have another question. Please share with us a life-changing investigation that you conducted.
Yeah, I mean that's hard, and I think we discussed one yesterday, which kind of changed my life. It was kind of like this was prior to the Gulf War, and you know, I had that information that these fellas were in our neighborhood, and I was to go out there and vet them and talk to them, and maybe get them to work with us. And again, because of my background, because I spent years in the Middle East and I spoke Arabic and I knew the customs, and you know, just little things like shaking the hand and then bringing the hand and touching the heart, which is very Middle Eastern. So, you know, that's what I did with these guys. Took off my shoes, took tea with them, wasn't rushed. You know, we took our time, and I said, gentlemen, you know, we could use your help. And I said, I'm going to give you, this was a Friday, I said, I'm going to give you the Monday to think about it. But this would be an excellent opportunity to help the country that has opened its arms to you. And sure enough, Monday came and they said, we're in. And that changed a lot of things for me, and for the war, for the course of the war, I think. Yeah. That was life changing.
Great investigation.
You know, Ken, we have a little bit of extra time, so I'm going to throw something in here that I know you wanted to talk about. And I was telling you, it all depends whether we have time or not. You wanted to talk about two cases you had on missing persons. I think one of them it was a 2003 case called the Annie McCarrick case.
Yeah, Annie McCarrick was my neighbor in Long Island. She was a friend of my baby sister, of course, much younger. Her father was my high school teacher, and her mother worked in the school as an administrative assistant. And she was the only child of John and Nancy McCarrick. She took you know, they're Irish Americans, so she took an interest in going to Ireland and studying. She studied there. She came back to the States. She wasn't happy. She said, hey, Mom, Dad, I'm going back to Ireland. I'm going to work for a while, and then maybe I'll go for an advanced degree. The parents were not too keen about that, but they let her go because she was a pretty strong lady. And then, so she was, you know, living with two other ladies, and it was like a Friday. This was in 1993. I think it was February 26th, 1993. And on that day, she called several friends and said, hey, you want to go with me on a bus trip to a small town outside Dublin? And they couldn't make it, and so they had to decline. So, and this plays a big role in the whole thing. So then she's caught on a CCTV camera in a bank withdrawing money, just, you know, normal amount of money. And then they found a shopping bag. Now this is where we pay attention. They found a shopping bag, you know, in her apartment, on the, you know, in the kitchen on the table, with perishables in there. And then you know, with she'd gone shopping at the local supermarket. Now, because she indicated that she was going to travel to this town, and because someone claimed to have seen her on the bus going to this town, for about 30 years, the whole investigation was her going to this town, and a possible serial killer, a fella who was actually caught trying to murder a girl, So all of a sudden, all eyes were on him, and he was arrested for a rape, and he was going to kill another woman, and he goes to prison for 10 years. But everybody just kind of went with this, a credible sighting on the bus. I know, I saw her, and then she said she was going to the town, and then she probably went. But 30 years later, the Irish police have upgraded the case from a missing persons to a murder case, which means that the Irish police can go back from the beginning, go back right to the beginning and reinvestigate. Now, 30 years has gone by, right? But what's interesting then is some information came up that she was seeing this guy who, before she went missing, and apparently he assaulted her. That's the story. And he and his brother, and those two guys are still around. So who knows? I'm hopeful that maybe we're going in the right direction right now. The father died of a broken heart years ago, and the mother, Nancy, said to me a few years back at church, she said, "Ken, I know I'm never going to see my daughter again. Please help me. Please help me bring her home." So that's the Annie McCarrick case.
That's interesting. Go ahead, Benny. Your next question.
Ken, in your opinion, which country is the biggest threat to America today?
For me, that's a no-brainer. I think it's China. China has got an army that is twice the size of our army. They have nuclear weapons. The Chinese government is very much into theft of intellectual property. And I know that because I worked for a company that was being targeted by the Chinese government. This company that I worked for had kind of a secret sauce. And so the Chinese government was hacking in on like a daily basis. And then, I got a call to go out, take a trip out to the Pacific to one of our plants. They were also recruiting people in our plants. And what they were doing is they were offering them, and this is through employees that leave, and they get to those employees first, and then they give them money, they give them a house, they give them a wife. And so all these little treats to go in with a flash drive and download the secret sauce, or take photographs, discrete photographs of the plant. So, I know firsthand that this is happening. And, then they're very ingenious, so let me tell you. But I worry about China a great deal.
Ken, myself, Benny, Pete Bollinger, who's the CEO of Police and Fire Publishing, and myself wrote a book, and it's probably going to be published next month. It's called "When the Music Stops, the Pain Begins."
I love it.
It's basically police officers. Go ahead.
What a title!
What a title, isn't it? When the music stops, the pain begins.
Absolutely, it's great.
Yes. And it's basically on police officers, teachers, pastors, correctional officers, doctors, boxers committing suicide because they suffer from PTSD. Reading your book, I read at the very beginning when you're describing your father, great man, was an assistant chief or deputy assistant chief with the New York Police Department. New York Police Department, how many officers do they have? 28,000, something like that, or more, right?
At one time, it was like almost 40,000 at one time.
40,000 police. It's a city, right? And but during his career, one of his best friends and a man that actually made an impact in your life, you saw him growing up, commit suicide. He was a police officer. I know those circumstances were different, but that is something that happened probably in the 60s, 70s, 80s. It is still occurring today. Today, a police officer in Florida, I was reading on Twitter, committed suicide. Wow. It's a common thing. Yeah. What do you tell? Our book is geared to helping them cope with PTSD, etc. What do you tell that FBI agent, that police officer, that gang member, that teacher, that preacher, that pastor, that doctor suffering from PTSD? What do you tell that person?
So look, David, I don't know a lot about PTSD, but of course, we hear about it all the time.
Yeah.
Um, right in my neighborhood here in Thousand Oaks, we had a former Marine, um, did a tour in Afghanistan, came back, here and went to the Borderline bar. You probably heard about this, and he killed like 11 people, including himself, and there was a deputy sheriff that was killed as well. This guy was suffering from PTSD, so you know you would hope that they would give signs to people that I need help. Can you help me? Can you point me in the right direction? Can I get talk therapy? Can I see a psychologist or a talk therapist to maybe get some medicine, whatever, to kind of resolve the issue or help them? Uh, that is the only thing I could think of, with that question.
Seek professional help and talk about it. Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Please. And, if you're the family member and you see what's happening, talk to other family members and get help for your loved one.
Yeah.
It doesn't get better.
Exactly.
And Ken, there's so many suicides that are unaccountable for that we take it as, oh, he was involved in a car accident, solo car accident. He was involved in a rollover. He went off the road. He probably fell asleep. We really don't know. We weren't in the car. We don't know that state of mind of that person. Could have been very well a suicide.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. No. We've had a few suicides in the FBI. A handful that I know of, but yeah, it seems to go with the profession, with law enforcement, and it's sad. But you have to take care of yourself, your body. Alcohol is something that will not help. But I would seek professional help. Absolutely, David.
Definitely. Go ahead, Benny.
Can you describe your life today after retirement? We all, like David and we stay busy. We got all kinds of stuff going on. We're busier now than we were actually working. But what's your life after retirement?
Well, it's kind of like your lives. We're working, but we're having fun doing it. And we're sharing our experiences with other people, the public, and maybe other law enforcement or those who are considering law enforcement. So to be honest with you, I'm having a ball. I always dreamed about writing books as well. And so, I got the first one out. That was a big hurdle. Now a second, and I have a third coming out. So I'm having fun. I'm a grandfather for the first time, and our first grandchild. So I'm having a nice time, very nice time.
And that segues into my last question of the night. Tell us about your upcoming book. You talked to us earlier, yesterday, off camera. I am excited about that book. Tell our listeners about it. That is going to be an outstanding book. Yes.
I hope so.
It is. Yeah.
It's a coming of age story. It's another memoir, and it's kind of my life from college forward. Of course, I spent 5 years in the Middle East as a teacher, with the royal family. So I have a whole bunch of stories about, Saudi royal families. I also met my wife in Saudi Arabia, so it's kind of a love story as well. So it's called Land of Sand. The Land of Sand. I'm about halfway through the book, and having a lot of fun writing it. Really enjoyable.
I can't wait. That is going to be an outstanding book.
Hey, Ken, have you ever wrote a book that's fiction?
No, I have not, but I would like to. That's a challenge. And I think after the third book, because these 3 books have always been on my mind, once the third book is over, I think I would like to turn to fiction and, fictional crime stories, mystery. I think that would be a lot of fun.
Well, in the beginning of your book, I think it's your first or second chapter, you talk about Tom Clancy. That you had an opportunity to meet Tom Clancy, who's the author of the Patriot Games, Clear and Present Danger, The Sum of All Fears. I love all of his movies. Tell us about that moment when you had an opportunity, but instead you went and met with an informant. Do you regret it?
Yeah, now I do. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, it was our security officer from the counterintelligence squad, over on the other side of the building, and he's desperate. He comes over, he goes, and there's only two of us in our squad. Everybody's out, and I'm getting ready to meet with an informant, and this guy Gary goes, oh my god, oh my god. The person that was going to have lunch with Tom Clancy just bailed. I need someone, please. Someone has got to have lunch, please. Ken, please have lunch with Tom Clancy. It's going to be great. He's going to pay for the lunch. And and I don't know what possessed me. I said, Harry, I'm sorry. I'm busy. I'm meeting an informant. Years later, oh my God, I blew it. And could you imagine? We're having lunch. He's it's paid lunch, right? I got a free lunch, and he's checking me out, and all of a sudden, I have a new character in my book.
That's right. That's right.
Strange,
Oh my God!
I blew it.
Hey, but you know what? Now you're becoming the Tom Clancy, writing your books. Oh, hey, it is what it is, right? Yeah.
Ken, I have a good friend of mine, and he's kind of a mentor for me in writing a book. I'm trying to write a book about my life, and
yes.
But I'm having a problem going from fiction to nonfiction in the same book. I have a good friend, Joseph Wamba. I'm sure you heard of him.
Oh yes, absolutely. The Onion Field.
The Onion Field, the Choir Boys.
Oh, wonderful.
So he's kind of giving me some ideas. He says, Benny, when you start writing a book, just start writing.
That's it.
And don't stop. Don't worry about typos. Don't worry about misspells.
Right.
Later on, you can go back and clean it up. But when your mind's going, start typing. And he also agreed. He said, it's really tough to go from fiction to nonfiction in a book.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the discipline is to write every day if you can, and not just some Facebook posts, but write 1,000 words a day, and maybe bring it up to 2,000 a day. That's in the perfect world to do that. And even if it's garbage, so what? It's like a skill. It's like a muscle that you're working. And then sometimes you're just possessed. You wake up at like 5 a.m. Oh my God, I got that thought. I got to write it, and then you feel good. You say, wow, that was good. So
it's just like you and David. You start writing, and then there's stuff that you can't talk about. You start talking, you start thinking about, oh yeah, I remember this, and next thing you know, oh crap, I can't talk about this stuff.
Well, change the names, give them a fictitious name.
Fictitious name, fiction.
Just what the FBI did to me when they had my manuscript. They said that chapter will not be able to be published unless you give the person a fictitious name and give them a different background. So instead of being this, I had to make him into that. So I felt bad about that because it's not really true, but the essence of the story, and I had no choice. They were going to take the story away.
Yeah.
Hey, Ken, I'll tell you, man, we've been looking forward for this interview. You're definitely coming back before your next book. You're definitely, because there's so many other questions. I think once our listeners buy your book and they purchase that book, without a doubt, they're going to have a lot of questions. We're going to definitely have you back. This is his book. If you want to buy it, A Cop's Son, you could buy it on Amazon. It's not an expensive book. I'll tell you, this is that book. You pick it up, you're not going to be able to put it down. And Benny, you get your copy tomorrow, right?
I hope so.
Yeah,
I hope so.
Okay.
I can hardly wait to start reading it.
Well, you're going to definitely be reading it this weekend. Seamus Donahue, welcome to the show once again, brother. Big Joe 67, welcome. Awesome show. We'll definitely buy the book. Respect to Felina. Respects, brother.
Happy to do dedications. If people would like dedications, I could do that as well.
Perfect.
Be happy to do that. But let me just tell you guys what I think of you.
Yeah.
You guys, you both are my heroes. Because
you're our hero.
No, I know the type of work that you guys have done. You guys have really been in the trenches, battling some of the most heinous criminals with guns drawn. To me, that's amazing. So my hat's off to you. I'm happy you guys survived, and I'm glad we're enjoying this moment.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Really appreciate it. We will see you sooner than later. We're definitely going to call you up. We'll have you back on, brother. Thank you very much. And for agreeing to come back on after last night, so people get 2 chances to watch you. part 1 and part 2.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. God bless you.
Thanks.
Thank you once
Thanks,
again.
Ken.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night,
Good night.
Ken.
Hey, what a man, this guy, Benny, when you get that book, I'm telling you, it took, when I flew down from Tampa last week, I was on the plane. Well, I was on my flight was 7 hours. The minute I hit the airport, I opened up the book. I didn't put it down. And then day before yesterday, I finished it at 5 o'clock in the morning. That's the kind of book it is. It's a great book, outstanding book.
You know what's another good book is Brian Perry's The Hit List.
Oh yeah, the hit list. Yeah,
I started reading it. Brian sent it to me and said, "Take a look and read it."
Yeah.
Man, that is a good book too. I mean, that's a good book to get.
And you know what's going to be even a greater book, a great book?
Our book.
When the music stops, the pain begins. That's going to be a beautiful book. We're going to save a lot of lives. Benny, with that said, tell us about next week's guest.
Well, next week we have it's one of Chalo's very good friend. Chalo is the retired Calexico police chief. We're going to have former Calexico police officer Hector Rios. Hector Rios went from Calexico to Santa Ana. No, he went to Santa Ana PD, came to Calexico, and then from Calexico he got assigned to the Imperial Valley's narcotic task force, like back in the day. I mean, he has an outstanding career. So we're going to talk about his experience as a Santa Ana police officer, as a Calexico police officer, and a narcotics task force officer in the Imperial County, in the Imperial Valley. So it should be pretty interesting. I don't know Hector myself. I don't know him personally, but he's a very good friend of Chalo's.
I'm looking forward to it. And guys, I don't know if you got a chance to see the show yesterday. I'll say it briefly. We're going to change the format of the show on once or twice a month on Thursdays. We're going to have special interviews on October 5th. We had to change this interview because of Benny's going to be on a Thursday night. We got 3 outstanding people that we're going to be interviewing next week. We'll talk about it. There'll be a new video out. You guys are going to really love this interview. These guys, it's going to be outstanding. With that said, Benny, last words, your advice to our listeners.
I'm going to tell them who it is. It's Hector Bravo. It's Hector Bravo's Greñas who we got to bring in. So anyway, for those working that blue line and putting their lives at risk, man, just prepare to fight for your life, man. Fight dirty, get tough, and get mean. Train, know your job. The job is dangerous, man. So don't hesitate when it goes to shit, because hesitation is going to kill you. Remember the deadly errors of others. Don't miss those danger signs. Stay in the fight and survive. Never give up. And remember, experience comes from all of our many mistakes.
And Benny, what I always say, live a purpose-driven life. Live every day like it's the last day, your last day on earth. You don't need a badge and you don't need a uniform to be a sheepdog. We're here to save lives, and we're here to continue saving lives with a badge or without a badge. Live a purpose-driven life. With that said, have a great weekend. God bless you and your family. Prayers for you all. Have a great weekend. And go Denver Broncos. And go Denver Broncos. Who are you going to cheer for? Go Chargers?
My Chargers, man.
A huevo. Hey, God bless you guys. Take it easy.
Take care, man.